Welcome to the jungle. Welcome to the jungle. Welcome to the jungle. Welcome to the.
As most of you know, if you've ever watched Sports Fluent, I have a love-hate relationship with baseball. That being said, my guest this week is a real estate agent. You're probably wondering why Jordan Skop is on the show this week, and the answer might surprise you. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks again, Anthony.
So just let's jump right in, because for those that don't know you, you've started, for lack of a better term, a crusade against the foul ball. Tell us a little bit about kind of how it got started and what you're doing, and then we can get into the why.
Sure. I think for 2 years now, I've been going strong. I am a big baseball fan and was aware of the foul ball risks more than 2 years ago. Had some experiences with flirting with danger, but never really thought I was going to become an advocate and sort of being the champion of the cause kind of thing. Yeah, the little girl who got hurt in Houston 2 years ago was the straw that broke the camel's back. And for me, I thought it was insanity that young people are in a position to be slammed or smacked in the face with a ball on a moment's notice. And I thought it was worthy of my time and my money to really try to get to it and find out what it's been all about. And it's been quite a journey and discovering new things every day from all angles.
So we get kind of, everyone can get on the same page, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of these points. So you go to a baseball game and it's an assumed risk, I guess. If you get hit by a foul ball, you're not paying attention, you're on your phone, heck, it just comes at you too quick. It cracks you in the head. I hate to be so graphic, and then there's some damage that's caused. Major League Baseball, that team, that stadium have zero liability?
Yes, for the most part, it's really never been successful. Just finding out about a case from 30 years ago where a plaintiff may have received $60,000, $70,000. But I'm learning more about that, so I really don't want to comment on it. But from what usually happens with the person who gets hit by a foul ball, they'll go to their lawyers, and the lawyers will say, sorry, you don't have a case. So they don't even make it out of their lawyer's office because of the baseball rule, because of the assumed risk that the fan takes coming to the game. Most fans, I think, are looking at foul balls as fun and good times. I don't think they're thinking about their 4 and 6 year old as flirting with serious danger. That being said, usually they don't make it out of their lawyer's office. Sometimes they'll make it early into the courts in the beginning rounds, if you will, and the judge will throw out the case, also citing the baseball rule. Sorry, folks, you don't have a case.
So let's when you say the baseball rule, is it an unwritten rule? Is it on the back of tickets? Like, where does this baseball rule come from?
Sure. So the baseball rule is over 100 years old. Since 1913, anytime we've gone to these events, these commercial events where we paid admission, this is the only industry that I know of that can cause you serious harm and not be held responsible for creating that scenario and harming the baseball fan. So most folks don't know about this rule. Yes, there is a little micro print on back of tickets. And now on e-tickets, you need to search much harder to find the micro print, which families are not studying. They're not looking at it as, we need to be prepared to go to the game. Let's read all the rules and regulations. And baseball has gone out of the way to keep it in tiny, tiny print, so fans won't take notice and they will not question their assumed risk at the game. They want people to go to the games, have a great old time, I call it having a good time under false pretenses, because once these families learn what we're doing here at Foul Ball Safety Now, that it's not every 50 years that somebody's getting a concussion, losing an eye, losing a life. It could be every week or every other week based on statistics. And I believe families will have an epiphany of outrage when they ask the logical question, well, what would be the next question families would ask if they heard about a neighbor being hurt? They would say something like, did baseball have prior knowledge to this? And the answer is yes. Baseball knows everything. They know everything. They know how fast, how high, how far the balls travel, at what speeds. And they know their nets are sorely lacking. And I've certainly been doing whatever I can as I'm writing the book, which unfortunately, no, I'm not going to say unfortunately, which I would say is not ready yet, because I'm still collecting information, testimonials from people who have been injured. So the book will be done when there's an audience that's ready to read. And this may be part one, Anthony, of books to come. So certainly a lot going on.
So let me ask you this. Have in your research and your time, doing the work for this book, obviously you're looking at baseball, but have you compared it? Is it the same with other sports? Is it now? I understand that, the inherent risk probably isn't as high, because I think there's more foul balls than, a basketball coming out of the court, or a football, or, a NASCAR crash where debris goes over into the crowd. But is it the same type of unwritten rule in every kind of, we'll stick with sporting events?
I can't really speak to the other sporting events, but I can tell you what I've learned about baseball. And certainly since 1970, when a young man by the name of Alan Fish died, 14 years old at Dodger Stadium, that was definitely a time where baseball could have come clean and had a leveled with their season ticket holders and said, hey, we need to put up the nets here. It's not a matter of if something gets crushed, it's when. And if we don't do it, the regulatory agencies will eventually find out about this, and they're going to tell us where the nets need to go. And unfortunately, fast forward to now, regulatory agencies have not gotten that epiphany as of yet. But if I have anything to do with it, I'll hopefully get a public statement from them saying we should have done this 50 years ago. But that being said, just by doing research, and even big establishments like NBC News and other publications have reported injuries, a frequency of injuries. And me just taking all of this information that's already there, there's already a lot of news content out there, and doing my own research and my own outreach, finding out one particular study from 2 years ago from NBC News implied 4,500 injuries from 2012 to 2019. I said 5,000 injuries. The LA Times guy backed me up. LA Times said 4,500 injuries if all the teams had participated in this particular survey. It was actually first aid independent contractors for 4 of the 30 teams, which reported a whole bunch of injuries over those 7 or 8 years. But if the other 26 had also supplied similar data, the LA Times guy came up with 4,500. I came up with 5,000 injuries that reported first aid. Now, I'm not saying all of them were busted heads and lost eyes, but I know a handful of people that have been talking to me at foulballsafetynow.com, people I've interviewed for the book, who Erwin Goldblum, who lost his wife at the Dodger game, also in 2018, also at the Dodger game. So the 2 fans that died on the major league level in the last 50 years were both at Dodger Stadium. And I know from where people are getting injured from the major leagues and the minor leagues, the job is not even close to being done. And the only way we'll really ever know if these ballparks are maiming free is if you do have an independent group, which is free of MLB, of engineers and architects who come into each one of those 150 ballparks. We're talking about 30 major league ballparks and 120 minor league ballparks. I did my own survey, Anthony, in about 3 months ago, and called all of the minor league ballparks I could reach. couldn't reach all 120, but I reached nearly 100. And from the nearly 100 I reached over the phone and just asking a simple question to the person at the ticket office, where do your nets go? 42 out of the nearly 100 that I connected to said they have no nets past dugouts. Where did that little girl, where did the little girl head get bashed? Past the end of the dugouts in Houston.
So let me ask you, why is it then you would think that the regulatory bodies, the MLB, more fan outrage hasn't kind of come to light up until this point? What's been holding them back now? Is it just because, does everyone just assume there's an inherent risk? Is it because they don't want nets up because obviously it takes away from the view of the game? What's been holding this back for so long?
Sure. So there's two things that are playing. Baseball's perpetuating a lie, and then there's a Congress, an act of Congress that hasn't happened as of yet. When I say perpetuating a lie, when they say things, MLB, our fans aren't interested in nets, at the same time, they are aware of all the secrets that remain secret, which is all the data. NBC did a study, but MLB knows the study backwards and forwards and sideways. And MLB and Rob Manfred, who's a high executive kind of lawyer, his job when he took the keys from Bud Selig, the former commissioner, was to keep those secrets secret. Don't ever let those files see the light of day, because then all the families will have their epiphany of outrage. Then why? So why is it still this way, and why has it stayed this way? And baseball perpetuates this. It's a lie, in my opinion, when they say, when executives from teams are saying things like our fans are calling us and saying they don't want any nets. But at the same time, they're withholding this information that families have every right to know. So they're kind of saying, well, our fans are telling us they don't want nets, but they're not telling us the full story. So that's one part. But I just want to jump forward to what's been happening. The last 2 years, there's been two senators from Illinois, Senator Dick Durbin, Senator Tammy Duckworth, who supposedly was going to ask baseball to be more transparent. And just recently, in an article by Matt Martell from Sports Illustrated, who interviewed me, and I was actually the source of a story, and he was actually part of my virtual Zoom calls and asking my guests questions, and didn't even give me 7 words out of 5,200, but that's another story. He said Durbin met with Manfred recently, and I believe Durbin again is letting Manfred off the hook, saying we're not going to allow them to sidestep this issue, kind of thing. But in my opinion, Durbin, maybe it's politics. Maybe Manfred said, hey, Dick, Durbin, come on, give me a couple more years. We'll get our act together. Again, from 2019, article in the New York Times said Durbin calls on MLB to do more after meeting with victims, family members of people that have been seriously injured by foul balls. I wasn't on that conference call or that meeting with Dick Durbin. I did meet with Dick Durbin's staff over the phone about 3 months ago, and I was saying basically fire in the theater in the minor leagues. 42 minor league ballparks that I found out have no netting past the end of the dugouts, and one in particular in Peoria, Illinois, which is an affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals. Just to educate the listeners, the 30 MLB teams pay the salaries of the 120 affiliates. And Peoria, Illinois, starting this year, had been hosting games with no nets at all above the dugout. And I thought we got past that like 5 years ago, 5-6 years ago. If you all go to the website, foulballsafetynow.com, check out the video that I had Tara, a production person, produce, where it shows the ball going in between two gentlemen in Tampa Bay, right in between their heads, right in between their shoulders, in slow motion from off the bat. And if it was a direct hit, that would have been the end of baseball in Tampa Bay that year. Could have been the end of somebody's life. So that's just another example, parallel to what's happening or was happening in Peoria. as of a number of weeks ago. Their excuse was our nets are on order. And I was like, no excuse. How can an owner of a building allow to let people walk past their building when the bricks are loose and the cement is on order? That
Right.
would not fly for a second. So I'll let you chime in, Anthony.
Yeah,
I'll keep going.
because it brings up so many questions that I want to kind of get the answers to. You've given us so much, but one, I think we already found your second book. It might be Book of Secrets, Major League Baseball. It's similar to that the book with the president gets with all the UFO stuff. But what happens now? So what spark? I guess it's a two-part question. One, what sparked you to get involved in this? And now obviously writing the book, but what's the next step? Like what should Major League Baseball do? So I've made you commissioner. What do they need to do to
Right.
make this
Well,
to fix this?
I believe everyone has to go because they had prior knowledge. It's not if, but when. And all those sad families that were hurt, never got an apology, don't even put on baseball anymore, and don't even want their kids playing baseball. So there's an emotional scar. And these fans will not come back to the game unless it's a sincere gesture from MLB. And that means this will not happen to anyone else again. So baseball knows these fans, which aren't 100 or there's not thousands of them. And from $70 million, it's a drop, 70 million fans, it's a drop in the bucket. But every year, there are lost souls who were victimized by foul balls. These people need to be welcomed back. There's no more in my mind. I said this 2 years ago when I started writing these articles before I put up the website. I said, no Hall of Fame for the baseball writers. None of this. They're journalists. They should be held to a higher standard. There's many baseball writers who went to journalism school who do not want to bite the hand that feeds them. Possibly their publisher says it's not good for business because the client, who's MLB, doesn't want these newspapers publishing articles that scare fans. But baseball writers are looking the other way. Shame on them. And I would love, Anthony, for you to invite any baseball writer, broadcaster. You've never heard a broadcaster on TV ever say anything remotely close like, if that guy gets hurt, they're not even covered, or have any kind of extended conversation about it. They too are instructed, don't talk much about it. There's a double standard from the baseball players to the broadcasters, to the writers, to the owners, to the lawyers. Their families know one thing, and the general public does not know something else. I'll just give you a connection with all the 5,000 minor leaguers, and I've interviewed some for the book, and they've gone on the record. I'm even hesitant, if I was putting out the book today, to call them by name because they still might be on their journey trying to be a pro. But out of those 5,000, because they'll be then associated as whistleblowers, but there's stacked quotes on my website at foulballsafetynow.com of major league players who say their own families will sit behind the net, and minor league players who are just in a community and they have to bear the burden knowing, because they're in the middle of a dream, they're trying to be a professional. I understand that. And they're not going to blow the whistle and say, I'm quitting baseball. They're pushing it aside. They'll tell their mother and fathers they do that. Mike Kuba, a coach. Why are they wearing helmets in minors and majors? Mike Kuba, the coach in 2008 of a minor league baseball team, was struck, actually not in the head, but the neck. But to MLB's credit, all the minor leagues and the major leagues were wearing helmets when the new season started. Give you a little credit there. Even though he was hit in the neck, well, whatever. At least they're more protected. His wife goes on record saying Mike used to scream at me in the 1980s when he was a player and I was talking to my friends or other wives. And if I wasn't behind the nets, he would really get mad at me and he would walk over to me during the game and say, you got to sit over there. And how ironic, he's the guy who got struck with the ball. and that's Mike Kuba's wife.
Mhm.
The minor leaguers, who are young men, bear the burden knowing they could be the next one to do the maiming. Where was the union? Where's Tony Clark? Why isn't he finally fixing this issue for the next players coming up? Most of these 5,000 players are expendable. They don't care about the emotional development of these mostly mostly young players who will not be MLB players. They're non-union minor leaguers. They don't get any union status until they become major leaguers. They need these non-union minor leaguers, who most will not make MLB, to nurture the development of the few players that will make the MLB. Those are the guys that usually come out of college or come out of South America or Korea or some other place and get the huge signing bonuses. So they know, one or two guys are going to make it and 7 guys are not. They're not going to, bring in, they don't want a team psychologist talking about it with those folks, because you think you think after giving $100,000 bonus to a 21-year-old, you think the owners are going to appreciate that the psychologist is talking about, hey, how do you feel about possibly being the next one doing the maiming? And I'll get right to it with my psychology hat on. Albert Almora, who hurt the little girl in 2019, should never, ever be singled out for a dysfunctional situation. The team psychologist should have been in his ear that day and said, dude, we all should feel horrible. I know you feel horrible, but everyone should feel equally, if not worse than you. Certainly people who've come before you. So don't put this on your own shoulders. And this is the 2 options I give to you today as a healthcare professional. I say to you, you have 2 options. I identify this with you as a dysfunctional situation. What are your options? 1, you quit the game, and I can understand why you don't want to deal with it. And 2, you band together with your brothers and say, we're not going up in 5 minutes or tomorrow or in a week until this problem is fixed. Because obviously it could have happened on the next pitch. Crazy as it sounds, it's happened that way.
And
Where
is the
players get 2
fix
balls.
is the
Yeah.
is the fix as simple as what I'm about to make it seem, where you just
Yeah.
need to run netting right
Yeah.
down, the first and third baseline to the foul pole?
They give you other stories why the delays, mandates are never used, and the word mandates are never coming out of the commissioner's mouth, because it'll almost imply an admission of guilt. Families that I've interviewed from the 1970s, Jenny, who lost her eye, was 14 years old at the time. She would be like, well, why didn't he mandate it? Or why didn't the commissioner at the time mandate it back then? It's almost like they're running out the clock. You get architects, you get engineers. Bottom line is, how difficult or easy it is, regulatory agencies are going to say, you get the job done. You're not allowed to maim people. You understand? Get it done, whether it takes 3 days or 3 weeks or a year. You can't operate a building and have people walk by when bricks are coming down from time to time without the proper cement. I mean, what
Yeah.
is that?
So let me
And so, yeah, sure.
No, I was just
Sure.
saying, let me ask you this final question, because
Of course.
obviously in preparing, for you to come on, I
Yes.
asked around, and I asked baseball, players that I know, announcers, fans, and every single one of them without fail said to me, well, it's an inherent risk. You go to a game, you should pay attention, you should know what's going on. You're not I even had one person, I'm not going to mention names, say, "Well,
Sure.
you're not there to look at your phone. You should be watching the game. And if you're watching the game, this doesn't become an issue." Is it are we are they oversimplifying the answer, or should we not just be protecting our people?
Protect your people. Staring without blinking for 3 hours, even if you're a former third baseman, you're not getting out of the way of a 100-mile-an-hour ball hooking into your seats. You're not. You don't have the capabilities of watching your children. That's ridiculous. I don't care if there's 100 signs posted. If you're in a section where balls are traveling at 100 miles per hour, you're not getting out of the way. Ricochet, boom, boom, boom. Ridiculous analogies by everyone. It's a
Mhm.
community of denial, and nobody will have a debate or come as a guest and talk about this issue, Anthony. I'd love for you to get these folks to come on. I almost remain like the undisputed narrative until somebody wants to get in the room and talk to me.
Right.
Love to get on an elevator or an airplane with anyone to talk foul balls, but
Yeah, and
nobody
I think
wants
that's
to
a
get
piece.
involved.
That's a
Yeah.
piece that not many people think about, is that
Yeah.
as you as an adult, sure, let's give you the benefit of the doubt. As an adult,
Right.
you can sit there for 3 hours, like you said, don't blink. You have cat-like reflexes, you're fine. But what about
Right.
the kids? What about the kids?
Yeah.
They're not going to
They
be
sh-
staring, right? They're
They
going to
shouldn't
be,
have been allowed. Yep.
yeah.
The
Sorry, go ahead.
regulatory agencies, if they knew they were flirting with that type of danger, Children's Services would have been in here a long time ago. And I'll keep on illustrating it and diagramming it and John Maddening it, what he used to do on the telestrator if he used to watch football. I'll
100%.
continue doing it till
Okay.
I get the epiphany across. That is so important. Erwin Goldblum backed me up on the last, and his wife was killed at the Dodger game in 2018. He's been to 6 or 7 of my Zoom calls. Even Willie Weinbaum from ESPN showed up, and he was also suggesting that my research wasn't as thorough as it could be by asking me questions like, well, how do you find out about these 42 minor league stadiums? I said, I called, try it sometime, make some calls and ask some questions. I don't think he's reported about the minor leagues since that last press conference. Erwin suggested, getting back to what Erwin Goldblum said at the last press conference, was, Jordan, you're suggesting no children be allowed at these minor league games. What about my wife? She was killed. I said, you know what, Erwin? Nobody should be allowed. So I went from no children should be allowed at any of these minor league games where no nets exist past dugouts. I believe everyone should not be allowed. And I also believe that the regulatory agencies knew this and knew the mathematics and the percentages, that's not every 50 years that these balls travel at these speeds from the 53,000 balls a year that go into seats. There's a high percentage of them that are doing some serious harm. So, yeah.
All right. So we definitely, I want to bring it back once the book is
Sure.
out. I am going
I'd
to,
love to come back, Anthony.
I'm going to
Thank
make,
you.
I'm going to make this commitment to you, is that I'm going to try to, I don't know that I'll be successful, but I'm going to try to find someone from Major League Baseball who will come on, who obviously opposes what you're saying. And so we can have a discussion, because it is for people's safety. And I think that's important. Where can I know that, I think you said it was foul, I don't want to get it wrong, foulballsafetynow.com, is that correct?
Yeah, it's foulballsafetynow.com. I will just say one more thing about a recent case from 2 months ago that was published in Illinois, in some law journal, that there's an act called the Willful and Wanton Act, which is what the plaintiffs sued for, and they are allowed to proceed with their case. The judge ruled in favor of the plaintiff. Basically, it implies that baseball had prior knowledge that their nets were not sufficient enough. So I have a feeling that's a win for the plaintiffs that feel like they have no recourse. Everyone should Google willful and want on, spelled want on, willful and want on, and Google it. And you'll see Eddie Rybarsky was the person whose face got crushed, nose and all, 2018. His case is allowed to proceed in Illinois. So that's a victory. And I'm very happy about that. And I want to put, the judge may not want to become a celebrity, but I'm going to get her on my website soon. But getting back to where you want to go, folks, is please go to foulballsafetynow.com. I have 2 petitions up there. One is to repeal the baseball rule. Then maybe those guys in Congress will actually do something and make it sort of like across the land. Let's get this done. And if that ever was abolished, that you would see nets going up and independent netting councils forming all over the place, because baseball would not be allowed to operate until it was done maybe by a third party, the oversight of that. And there's also another petition also to ask for more netting, which if I can get a ton of signatures together, I could drop it on Commissioner Manfred's desk. I've been renting out airplanes, one in Peoria and one over the Field of Dreams game. These people that have been hurt and injured, they need to be righted, and they need a sincere gesture from MLB. And just please go to foulballsafetynow.com. If you've ever been a victim of a foul ball and you feel like you can talk to me off the record or work with the guy I'm working with who's a great writer, we can talk on the record. Or if you know somebody or you want to chip in with me on the next airplane, because let's go. We need to make some statements. Anthony, this was tremendous.
Jordan Scott, thank you so much for your time. It's foulballsafetynow.com. Jordan, appreciate it. Thank you so
Welcome
much.
to the jungle. Welcome to the jungle.